Hey everybody. So today we have a repair to make on this hand-woven basket someone we know made 30, 40 years ago. And it has leather handles on it, and this one, there's some pieces here. The leather's just getting old. I don't think it was really ever oiled or anything like that. It was probably taken to the beach a bunch. So we're going to pop at least this handle off. We might just do both of them. And we figured it'd be cool to make a video making, because this is kind of a different style handle, making them in the same style and repairing the basket. So it looks like someone already started kind of trying to take this apart. These are just like pop rivets, you can see in here, and these have been taken off. So this leather is super dry, so I think I might be able to just kind of coax this one off. There we go. Oh no, oh, they're just rusted. Look at that. I thought someone had taken off the rivets because it looks like it's just leather, but they're on there and they're rusting. So it just matches. That's crazy. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna cut these off. It's probably safer for the rest of the basket. All right, so we got this handle off, and you can kind of see how it was made, right? So it's just like a little tubular situation, and then there's a hole punched, and they actually just riveted the handle to this one piece, and then there was like the second piece on the back here. So I am going to actually cut this apart. I think this is going to be like nylon cording. Yep, I can probably get that out. Yeah, see? So we just have some nylon cording here, and I don't... So this is like some nylon cording. I'm not going to use this again because it's kind of smelly. So what I have is some other nylon cording, and this is a little bit smaller, but I'm going to use thicker leather to compensate for it. I think we're only going to replace this one handle, because looking at it, it's kind of cool to see like the original handle, the new handle, and then when the original handle on the other side breaks, we'll just replace that one as well. So in piecing everything together, this was a 14-inch run of nylon. So we have 14 inches of our new nylon, and then what I did was I took this apart and I measured it. This is on the end here, there's 1 inch extra, and then this is 2 inches around. So we're going to start off with the same measurements and see how that works. When you're doing this kind of work, you kind of just got to wing it and kind of cut everything to fit custom because it's a one-off. So the next step we're going to do, I'm going to grab some like 4 or 5 ounce veg tan. This is actually really thin. This is like maybe 3 ounce. It's closer to 2. I was surprised at how thin this was. You can kind of see how thin it was, and it's not skived down on the edges. So it's pretty thin. So if we go up to 4 ounce, that'll make up for the difference in the thickness of the handle since we're using smaller nylon. Alright, so I have my 2-inch strip cut. If you've seen any of our other tubular handle videos, you know I like to make a couple little marks. So I have a center mark here, and this is just going to be, when we lay this in, just kind of gets us roughly centered. It doesn't have to be perfect, but gets us roughly centered. And then I have a mark 1 inch from the end on either side. You can see that I cut this actually like a 1/2 inch short. Because we're using a thicker leather, it'll just give that transition because we're going to be kind of smushing this down completely. It'll give us a little transition so that it's not like it's not super chunky under when we put this little piece back on. So now all we're going to do is glue everything up, and the way I like to do this is I'll just do like a little strip down the center here. I'm not going to glue all the way to the edges yet, because what I'm going to do on the nylon, some people don't glue their core, which is fine. I like to just because it's, I don't know, to me it's a little bit easier. So I'm just going to glue where the nylon's going to sit on the leather right now. And then I'm going to take my nylon and I'm just going to kind of dab a little bit of glue on one side of it. And we'll let this glue set up, and then that way we can put this core into place, and then we can go through and glue all the rest of it, because this whole thing needs a coat of glue. And it's always kind of, when you have something that's holding tension, like you're going to roll it, doing 2 coats of glue is always helpful, especially because this is like 5-ounce leather. The first one will soak into the fibers of the leather. The second one will just be a little extra, and once it's all dried and bonds really, really tightly once you stick them together. So once our glue's set up, we're just going to take our core here, and I've melted the ends a little bit. They can come apart a little bit, but I just don't want them to fray super bad. And I'm just going to place this in the middle like this. So once the glue's dried, we're just going to roll it up. I like to start from the middle. We're using thicker leather on this one than we normally do, so you just got to go slow. It's not going to be as flexible. And just make sure that you've got plenty of glue on there to do its job. And so I like to start from the center, and I'm really only worried about getting the edges to match. I'm not really worried about like sticking down inside right now. That'll come next. And there we go. And then once we have this stuck down like this, I'm going to take my bone folder, and you can see it's, because the leather's thicker, it's going to not want to stay stuck very well. So you just got to keep kind of molding it and pressing it. Eventually you'll get it to stay where you want it. And then what I'm going to do is go in with my bone folder and start working it. And once you get the bone folder in there, you can see you really start to actually stick it down nice. And don't worry about this line, because we're going to actually use this as our stitch line, so it's perfect. That's where it needs to be. And so I'm probably going to do this for another 5 or so minutes just to get everything molded nicely. So on the original, you can see they just sewed straight to the end. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to use the line that we kind of naturally formed by using our bone folder to stick this together as our stitch line. And then we'll just sand everything down on the drum sander. So we're just going to punch this and sew it. So now that we have everything sewn up, we have our Weaver Power Edge Slicker here, and I like to use this for things like this just because it's really fast. So we turn it on, and we're just going to sand down the unevenness here to get it nice and smooth. Alright, so here's our existing handle here, and if we look at the one that we made, it's almost spot on. I'd say we pretty much nailed it. And you can see I did leave a little extra. Normally I would trim this down a little bit more, but the original one has kind of a wide trim allowance, seam, I guess you would call it. So we left it to try to get it to match as best we could. The next step we need to cut out. Luckily I have one of these that came off that is like nice and flat and traceable. So we need to trace 4 of these out. I'm going to do this out of thicker leather, like a 6-7 ounce that I have down here. And then this is the side we'll be using the existing holes, I don't want to punch any more holes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke smaller holes in the leather because these is kind of, because this is kind of old. I don't know what this is woven out of. Some reed maybe, grass. I don't want to make these holes any bigger, and they're a little stretched out, so I'm going to go with a smaller hole in the leather so that the pop rivets that we use can kind of have more material to sandwich in between, and it should be okay to go. So we have all 4 of our little triangles cut out, and I could have made like a template to make this perfect, but what I like to do when we're doing pieces like this is kind of I do my best to make it look like the replacement part is as old as the rest of the piece, right? So these are all misshapen from years of being riveted and, getting wet and drying out and getting all scrunched up. So by using this leather piece as the template, everyone's going to be a little bit imperfect, and it's going to just add to the authenticity of the look when it's replaced. So to that point, these were die cut. This looks like a die cut edge, and they're not burnished at all. So what I'm going to do is I am going to burnish them a little bit, but I'm not going to bevel them and make them all shiny and stuff. I'm just going to take some 300 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to kind of sand down the edges here. I'm not going to bevel them and round them over because that would stick out and look way different than the other side. And then we'll throw a little bit of gum trag on there and just give them a really quick burnish. We're not going to glass them up because, again, we want them to look like the originals because the other side is still original. So these are like single cap rivets. I only have double cap rivets, but we have the same finish, roughly the same size, and these are plated brass so they won't rust out. So what we're going to do is I like to take the male part of my rivet, and then I use my rotary punch, and I just kind of go through and see what the smallest hole I can get away with is. It's looking like it's going to be that one. And so I'm going to go through now, and I'm just going to punch out holes in all of these. And then 2 of them I'm going to have to make a center hole into. But we'll mark that after we get all these punched. So if we look at the originals here, you can see that the rivet that attaches the handle isn't perfectly centered. It's kind of up a little bit. So I'm just going to honestly kind of freehand it. I'll try to do it like this, and I'm just going to make a mark kind of right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this on one of them, and I will transfer it to the other one so I don't have to, at least the 2 will be similar. And now we have all 4 of our pieces, and we have our handle. So we're ready to do some installing. Oh, actually, we need to punch this hole first. So this is going to come down here like this, and I'm going to reference this, right? So I took the core out, but oh, here's one. So the core here ends, and then the hole is punched like right away, and that's going to keep the core from ever coming out. So on ours, we're going to basically do the same thing. I'm using a smaller hole, so I am going to give it a little more space, but we're just going to go down about a 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch, punch it, and then when we install it, there we go. I'll trim this off too. Alright, so before we install everything, this is the color we're trying to match, and I don't really want to dye it because this isn't dyed leather. So I want it to age just like this would age, the existing handle. So I'm just going to use some liquid mink oil, and this will soak into the leather, but it'll also make it a lot darker than neatsfoot oil will. or any other conditioners. Mink oil is usually the one that'll do a lot of darkening. So I'm going to give that a thick coat, and then the other thing is I'm probably going to install this while it's wet, a little bit wet, and it'll almost wet mold because you see we have, like, on the original pieces things are kind of misshapen because they've been on there a long time. So if we install this while it's a little bit damp, we can get kind of that same effect with the new pieces. It'll kind of form a little bit to the rivets being pressed in, and then once it's dry it'll keep that shape. So I'm going to go pretty heavy on this stuff. I'm not going to go, I'm not going to soak it in a big bucket of it or anything, but I am going to go heavy on it so that we can get a lot of color out of it. So this is pretty fresh. It's not fully dried yet, and any of the unevenness you see, that's usually from like gum trag, and oddly enough it always sinks in and the color evens out. So it will lighten up a bunch, but you can see we're much closer now to the color of the other handle. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my two pieces that, the way that they attach this, and I don't necessarily think I would do it this way, I'd probably go all the way through, but I don't want to put another hole in that body of the bag because it is old natural weaving, so I don't want to do any more damage to it. So you can see they just riveted the handle just to this center hole in one side. So we're going to do the same thing. I have double cap rivets, so I'm going to take one side, and then that's not installed, but it is going to stay there, right? And then I'm just going to do that with the other side as well. And now we'll head over to the Little Wonder, and we'll get everything riveted in. So if we look at this side, we have the 4 rivets here, and then on the inside there's like a big leather washer to catch everything. So we're basically just going to try to do our best to set this side up the same exact way. And I'm hoping that these rivets, so you can see we want the seam facing out, so we'll go with seam facing out here. I'm hoping that the rivets will hold everything in place. They are pretty strong when you just like clip them in, but every once in a while there's a little bit too much tension and it won't hold. It would make our lives much easier if it did. So these are kind of, they're not really directional, but they are a little bit. So I guess we'll start by putting this in here and putting it through. I'm gonna call this wicker. I know it's not. I just keep calling it wicker. And then we're gonna put this here, and hopefully this will, there we go. All right. And we want to make sure we catch this through the existing hole in this bag. There. Oh, we're in business here. There we go. This is what it's going to look like. Everything is just clipped in place. We're going to go over, and I'm going to do this one before I attach this one. I'm not even going to try to get them both on without being attached. So now we're going to get the next one installed, and this one, you might, to make your life easier, you could kind of like tie this up for a night to let it mold. I am impatient, so I'm not going to do that. But hopefully, I don't think any of the leather we used is heavy enough that it's going to give us too hard of a time. So I'm just going to do the same thing again. Just clipping these in, kind of moving everything gently once you have one clipped in because, because once you have them clipped in, you can kind of like, they'll pop out and fly across the room, which we'd like to avoid. And then our last one here, get that through that hole there. And there we go. Let me get that clip there. Okay, so let's head over and finish this up. So once we have this on, and I'm pretty excited about that. That looks really good. I'm gonna give the existing original handle a coat of Aussie conditioner from Phoebing's. It's one of my favorites. And the reason I'm not gonna do the mink oil on this is because the mink oil will darken it up more, and we're trying to get these two to match. So we want this really needs to be conditioned, but it doesn't need to be darkened up. So with the Phoebing's, what I like to do is I just put it on with my hands, makes your hands feel nice and soft. I put a bunch of it on. Like, it almost looks like it's too much. You know, again, you don't have to go crazy with it. You don't want to waste material, but I like to kind of glob it on there and let it sit. Make sure it's nice and soft. Warm it up a little bit if you need to. And then just let it sit for, like, you know, go have lunch or go mow the lawn or something. Let it sit for an hour or so. And then come back. And in my experience, I've found that it really does make a big difference waiting and letting it sink in. And you can kind of like work it in too, kind of massage it a little bit. So I'm just going to go around and get all these little leather bits on this original handle. And then why not, we'll throw some on our new handle too, just because maybe it'll help them match better in sheen once they're all polished up. Alright, so we took our own advice and went and got lunch, came back about an hour later, and you can see that all of the stuff is still sitting here. So I'm going to just take a paper towel and just wipe off the excess. You can use a cloth, you can use microfiber, whatever you'd like to use. I don't mind getting this stuff on my hands. It makes your hands feel really good, so I'm cool with that. And we'll just kind of do a light polish. I'll grab like a cotton cloth after this, once I get the most of the excess off, and just kind of buff it out a little bit. But this is the original handle, and it's already looking so much better with a little bit of time soaking in that wax oil mixture. And then for our new handle, this wasn't, you know, this is a new leather, and we had already doused it with mink oil, but it's always good to give it a first coat before it gets used. And here we go. So yeah, I'm real happy with how this came out. It's a cool design, like the way everything's riveted together. I think, as I said, if I were to do this from scratch, I would definitely pass this rivet, the center rivet that holds the actual handle on, through the bag. But because this is old and a natural material, and it wouldn't match the other side, you know, I didn't mess with that. But I would love to make a leather bag with this style attachment. Maybe we'll do that at some point in the near future, because I just love the look of this rolled leather with the riveted, you know, to maybe do some copper rivets and stuff. That'd be sick. So here's the original, and here's the new one. Obviously the colors aren't going to be exactly the same, but for what it is, I'm pretty happy with it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.